What's poppin', everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Zach Lesage here. Today we are going to be covering over the top 10 best decks from Shrouded Fable. Now we have a little bit of movement compared to last week, a lot of decks shifting based off the metagame, and as we get closer to Baltimore Regionals, the second major event in the Shrouded Fable format, there are going to be quite a few changes. What are they going to be? Well, watch this video to find out. I will be covering over the top 10 best decks, lists included, and some commentary on why they are placed the way they are. If you want to play along with this video, put your best 10 guesses in the comments below. See if the video is going to be accurate or not. See if your guesses are going to be accurate or not. And of course, the copy and pastable lists are going to be in the pinned comments as well. Those might not necessarily go up right away, but probably within the next 24 hours or so. You know how we say it? Let's get it. Let's jump into that top 10. Kicking things off is going to be Moon Ursaluna with Iron Valiant EX. Now, this is a deck that has not been popping up online, and this is where I really want to kind of start things off by saying, I think number 10 is a single prize card deck, and right now I don't think Lost Zone Box is as good as what I want it to be. Whereas I feel like this deck could actually take down a Charizard deck. And it can take down a turbo aggressive deck like Miraidon, Raging Bolt, Roaring Moon. Can beat Regidrago. Sure, you might have a tough matchup against Gardevoir, but this deck is relatively well positioned in our current metagame, which makes me think that this deck is going to be over number 10. The core strategy of this deck is going to be utilizing Iron Valiant, putting damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon, using Moon Ursaluna to use Mad Bite, and you can kind of go over and over again with Night Stretcher, Lana's Aid, Energy Retrieval. This deck is a kind of hybrid single prize card deck, which is why it's going to be lower than other single prize card decks than, let's say, Ancient Box, but I do think it deserves a spot on a list. Is it number 10 exactly? This week it is. Otherwise, I don't think there's necessarily a other deck that I want to put in the top 10. Snorlax, which did not make this list, could have been there. Goldango, which didn't make this list, could have been there. Lost Zone, Radzard could have made this list. Not really where I think it is. I think Blood Moon is more well positioned in the metagame. And at the end of the day, a lot of people ask me, yo, Zach, how come you came up with this list the way that you did? Well, I think it's going to be decks that I think are positioned doing well into Baltimore. And a lot of the times I share my exact deck lists as I'm about to play them in tournaments, whether I'm playing them at League Cups, League Challenges, Regionals, Internationals, or Worlds. And I'm really accurate with what I share with the community. If you go back and see the list that I've played at tournaments, it's not always going to be a 1-for-1, but I am sharing a lot of information. So I hope that everyone this is my true, unbiased, or maybe biased, depending on which way you look at it, approach towards it. I just want to give everyone that little bit of insight. So at number 10, we do have this deck. If anyone's missing any of the cards for these decks, be sure to check out our sponsors at Kayfabe Cards, GameStop, the Shuffle Squad website, and of course PTCGL store if you want to be playing these decks online. Every list got to start off somewhere. We got Blood Moon at number 10. The rest of the list is going to be a little bit more meta from here, but we have to start somewhere. Let's jump into number 9. Floating into number 9 is going to be Gardevoir EX. Now, Gardevoir EX is a little bit more notable than the Blood Moon Iron Valiant deck. And I mean, that's probably why it's at number 9, right? Gardevoir EX is all about psychic embracing those psychic energies from your discard pile to your Pokemon. Curly is our built-in draw engine, and we have a handful of psychic Pokemon that are going to be doing cool things like moving damage counters around with Monkey Dory, shutting off your opponent's abilities, sniping their bench, etc, etc, etc. We have a handful of different techs here, and Gardevoir just ends up working. The reason why it's a little bit low is the metagame's become a little bit volatile towards it, whereas we look towards tough matchups from Regidrago, tough matchups from Ancient Box, Miraidon. They're not impossible matchups, but they aren't necessarily matchups that you want to face round after round after round. If the metagame changes up a little bit and we see a little bit more of the Charizard trend that we've been seeing online, Gardevoir might be able to make its way through this quite capably. So right now, number 9, Gardevoir is not necessarily my favorite deck in format, but it is one of those things, if you do dodge quite a few, it could make a deep run. You just gotta hit those right matchups, and that's really the case for a lot of these decks. I think almost every deck within the top 10, maybe 15, 20 decks is certainly viable. It's just where they're positioned based off the decks that are towards the top. So we'll continue to see exactly what's going on. Right now we have Gardevoir at number 9. At number 8, we have Roaring Moon EX, the deck that came second at the World Championships. Now, Roaring Moon EX kind of was nowhere before Worlds, and after Worlds, it's like, hey, cool, we're a top 10 deck. And it kind of became one of the mighty 3 aggressive decks between this deck, Raging Bolt EX, and Miraidon. And considering it's the first one that we've seen, there's a pretty good chance that this is the deck that I'm not the fan of out of the 3 aggressive decks. I think it's okay at knocking out some Pokemon, but when you have an attack like Frenzied Gouging, you do put yourself potentially at a disadvantage to get knocked out by a single prize card Pokemon. I think this deck is just more susceptible to single prize card Pokemon than Raging Bolt and Miraidon, but it is an aggressive deck, and if you do want to play a dark aggressive deck that's 2 prize cards, this deck's all that you're looking for. You're going to use Professor Sada's Vitality, accelerating energies to your dark Pokemon like Roaring Moon EX, attach a dark, use Dark Patch, and use Petrant to bring it to the active, attack your opponent's Pokemon for either 220 damage because you're discarding a Stadium in play, or knocking them out in one hit with Frenzied Gouging, putting yourself at 200 damage on you. It's a really simple and sweet deck with a single prize card Pokemon like Roaring Moon to kind of balance things out. This is literally dark type Raging Bolts. I'm not sure if I like it as much as Raging Bolts, and but it's really it exists, and I think it's a valid choice. There might be some reasons to play this deck over other aggressive decks. Like, I think this deck has a better matchup against Snorlax compared to some of the other decks in the metagame. But it might have a slightly worse matchup against Regidrago than I feel like a typical Raging Bolt does. So there are some give and take in the matchups. They're not just like, hey, we're all 3 of the same decks. Zach, you place this one 8th. I just think that this one, based off the metagame, is not as well positioned as the other aggressive decks might be. But that's my current take on it. Let me know what you think about aggressive decks, aggressive 2 prize card decks. Which one is your favorite? Let's jump into number 7. At 7, we are going to be going back to back with aggressive decks, and here we have Raging Bolt. Now, Raging Bolt on my list last week, I think, was within the top 3 or 4 decks, and one of the things that's holding this deck back is Charizard is re-entered into the metagame. If I think about some of the top decks that are probably towards the top of this list, like Charizard, Ancient Box, we've had 2 new matchups enter that have really put Raging Bolt down. Ancient Box is a near auto loss. Charizard is an incredibly difficult matchup if they do not feed you 2 prize card Pokemon before you knock them out. If you have any questions about that, let us know in the comments below. But right now we have Raging Bolt EX at number 7. The goal, similar to the Turbo Roaring Moon deck, is to use Professor Sada's Vitality, accelerate energies to the Raging Bolt, use Teal Mask Ogerpon to get more energies into play, and really bring up your opponent's Pokemon, knock them out whenever. I think if you hit Regidragos, if you hit some other aggressive decks, you might be able to do okay, and this deck kind of can pummel over anything if they have a little bit of a slower start. In terms of metagame placement, it's not necessarily where it's at. So if you're a Raging Bolt fan, it's not that it's a bad deck. I just think it's a little bit not as well positioned as I want it to be. And that's coming as a person that was like, if I were to be going to one of these major events, I can't be going to Baltimore because the birth of my daughter is way too close to that. In fact, as I'm filming this video, we're off to the hospital today. So it's going to be a really interesting experience for that induction, all that kind of stuff. But yeah. It's one of those things where this is one of the top decks on my list, the decks that I carry in my bag for League Cups, and I don't think I can necessarily play right now, so it's a tough situation when it comes down to it. But Raging Bolt EX, great deck, just not properly positioned right now. And another turbo deck. So this one we have Miraidon EX, and for a lot of the lists in this video, I've gone over lists that did well at Worlds. I think for Gardevoir, I went over Josh Frink's list. For Moon, I went over the list that came second at Worlds. And then for this deck, I'm going to be going over Ryan Harris's top 16 list from Worlds. I think that this deck is incredibly built when it comes down to it. I know that Jesse Parker might have gone a little bit further. No shade towards Jesse. This list just kind of speaks to me with the Future Booster Energy Capsule, especially with Ancient Box kind of being towards the top. Having that Raichu V, just in case you run into a Charizard, it kind of has the answers that I'm looking for towards the metagame. Really, we're trying to use Miraidon, search out lightning Pokemon, use Electric Generator, rip those energies into play, and attack into our opponent's Pokemon over and over and over again. In this case, Iron Hands could draw extra prize cards against some of the single prize card decks. Ancient Box is one of those single prize card decks, and it's well positioned. This is the reason why this one takes a slight edge compared to both the Moon and the Raging Bolt. So I think that's really my kind of place, that this deck has a little bit more of a catch-all kind of matchup compared to based off the metagame right now that's existing. Whereas if Snorlax was one of the top 5 decks, we might see Moon make it there, where Raging Bolt kind of feels like it's in the middle. Or if Drago was a little bit more or something like that. Right now, I think Miraidon kind of takes it as having that approach that a little bit more favorable neutral matchup spread into our current top of the metagame. Let me know what you think about that. Again, if you do need any of the cards for these decks, check out Kayfabe Cards, PTCGL Store, GameStop, and the Shuffle Squad website. We have all that stuff available in the description, along with links to our other videos. Be sure to check out our channel, our Patreon, and all that good stuff. We're about halfway through this list. If you haven't put in the comments your top 5 best guesses, what are you doing right now? Let us know what you think the top 5 best decks are. Are you right? Are you wrong? We will bet to find out. Sliding in at number 5 is going to be Iron Thorns EX. Now, Iron Thorns EX won the World Championships, and it hasn't really been anywhere since. I mean, it's seen some light success at online events, probably has done okay at a few cups, but it went literally from winning the World Championships to not really seeing as much play. And I think right now, if we look towards the metagame, there are quite a few decks that this deck takes advantage of that are currently placed within the top 10. And I think right now, as it's kind of a flow where Iron Thorns was not great, people weren't really feeling it, and then it kind of crept up and won the World Championships for a lot of reasons, and then it won World, so it's instantly not as good. We've kind of put it back to the depths, and as Baltimore is coming back up, we're kind of about here. We're about a week before Baltimore when you watch this video. I think the deck has an opportunity to strike. It's kind of given opportunities for decks like Lugia to do well at Worlds, die out of the meta, come back. Iron Thorns like, hey, yo, the matchup spread's looking kind of good. I think that this deck is getting increasingly as a better choice for Baltimore, the way that the current metagame is shaping up. And people are really pulling a lot of their techs out of their decks for this. Really, we're going to be using the initialization ability to shut off our opponent's abilities in whatever capacity we can. I think it's rule box, non-future Pokemon, and we're just going to use Iron Thorns, disrupt our opponent with Crushing Hammer, Pokemon Catcher, and really leave them where they're just like draw, pass, draw, pass, draw, pass. We literally saw this deck win World, so if you want to learn a little bit more about this deck, I would watch the World stream. We've also covered most of the decks in these videos on our YouTube channel, so if you want to learn a little bit more, be sure to check those out. I think Thorns is a solid play. Maybe not the best play out of every single thing, but it's certainly an opportunity to steal in events and win events, spike in events, if you really are looking for that play. So if you're scrambling at Baltimore and it's the night before the tournament and you're like, hey, nothing feels good, this just might be a solid choice across the board. Flying high into the number 4 spot this week is Lugia. Lugia kind of being like ho-oh, it's rising from the ashes. In this case, kind of went to the bottom of the sea, was like, yeah, we're gonna take a nap. Now we are back. And I think a lot of it's because lightning type decks were a little bit down. So you might be like, yo, Zach, we featured Miraidon and we featured Thorns kind of back to back at number 5 and 6 respectively. Why would this deck be number 4? Well, this is based off of my projections. It's not that those decks are definitively there, it's the way that they're placed going into the tournament now. So those decks might rise up if you follow my advice, and pretty good track record when it comes back there. Not to be whatever, we got some good stuffs going on up there, right? I'm not Azul GG or Tord Reclave. I'm never gonna claim myself to be. But if there's another opinion you're looking for that's pretty solid, played the game for 20 years, I think that some of these calls are kind of great. They're not just hot, they're great. Lugia seems pretty great because it has a middle-of-the-road matchup spread. As long as you're avoiding the lightning-type Pokemon, you should be pretty good. That's any deck that's running an Iron Hands, like a Chen Pao, kind of out of the metagame. Any deck that's running just pure lightning, Miraidon, Iron Thorns, tough matchups. Those decks aren't really up right now. Lugia is just able to use Summoning Star, summon those Archeops, accelerate energies, got that thin Shinchino line, and we saw a handful of players do incredibly well at Worlds with Lugia VSTAR. So if you're looking for a great choice into the event, pretty neutral, a lot of opportunities. If you set up, you'll have a great game. This is where it seems like it's at, and it's one of the few decks that does pretty well against Ancient Box. So give it a whirl. I think that Lugia really has a lot of opportunities to see some success here, and it might just be really a deck that rises over the next week or so. But to enter that top 3, I know we just entered the top 5, but come on, top 3. If you haven't already, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and let's jump into that number 3 pick. Number 3 is going to be Charizard EX. Now, Charizard EX kind of clawed its way back out of the metagame, and you're like, hey, you want to know what? Regidrago might be a tough matchup, but everything else seems okay because all these turbo decks are coming out to counter Regidrago, and I'm out here being Charizard, being like, we're just going to knock out your turbo decks. And I'm one of the only good decks that has a good matchup against Ancient Box, and I can hold my own against pretty much every other deck on this list. It's true, and that's why Charizard's at number 3. A lot of players are really looking into it. I took a modified version of Pedro Pertusi and William Azevedo's Charizard deck. I think I might be the exact 60 or off by 1. Some of them are running a double turbo energy over a mist energy. I'd rather have the little bit of extra protection against a Regidrago's, Dragapults getting copied, putting the 6 damage counters on a Pokemon. Maybe that's a little too extra. Right now, the whole idea of this deck is to use Charizard, accelerate energies to your Pokemon, running a really thin 5 fire energy line. Pidgeot can search out whatever you want. Dusknoir can allow us to do a lot of crazy, zany things. And Entei V, the big question that we get there is, why are we playing it? Really for the grass-type Pokemon in formats. Because Charizard, as much as it takes fire energies, it's not a fire Pokemon. So something like Entei V can knock out a Teal Mask Ogerpon, cannot be responded to with a Teal Mask Ogerpon, whereas Charizard just gets knocked out due to weakness. I think that Charizard, you can see a bunch of different forms. We have Tord versions of this deck. We have the William Azevedo Pedro Pertusi version of the deck. We have new modified versions that are really popping up this week, such as Calvin Connor playing the barrel version at late night. I think he made top 4, top 8s. Lots of things going on. So I would really see where Charizard is. If you're a Charizard player, sure, you're certainly looking and being like, hey, there's a bunch of different lists. Really, I think you're going to be able to reap the benefits of testing this deck more. If you're not a Charizard player, I think it's one of those things where Charizard has been such a deck for so long that if you haven't really gone to it now, now's a really good opportunity because it gets really good with the next set too. So Charizard's at number 3, 2 more decks. Let's get it. Let's see what we have at number 2. At number 2, we have Ancient Box. Now, Ancient Box has been really rising. Online events, people have probably realized, they're like, hey, you know how Charizard's beating those aggressive decks? We beat those aggressive decks. And with Iron Bundle, we can get through the Regidrago's Goodra. That's true too. And we could just knock out whatever, and we're good against other single prize card decks. What do we even lose to? Well, I think Ancient Box, it's a tale as old as time, is some of these inconsistent decks. And when I say inconsistent decks, we are a combo piece deck on a single prize card Pokemon. We don't have a lot of bearing. So you're gonna have to do combo after combo after combo, and when it works, this deck's fantastic. I personally took a very similar Ancient Box list, to a top 100 or so finish at the 2024 North American International Championships. So I'm not a stranger to this deck. When it works, it works. When it rains, it pours. And I think Ancient Box is really, someone could win the regionals with this deck. List is probably going to be within 1 or 2 cards. The strategy is to use Roaring Moon, ramp up ancient cards in your discard pile, power yourself up with Professor Sada's, like half the decks on this list, and keep on rolling. Attack, 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 attack. Bring up 2 prizers. Really try to use the metric of drawing prize cards more than your opponents. Really, this is a super solid list. I would have no complaints playing a list like this. I've seen Tex, I've seen the Petulant, I've seen a lot of different things. To me, this is really close to what I'd be playing, if not exactly what I'd be playing, or at least one of the decks that I'd have in my bag if I was going to Baltimore Regionals. So if you haven't played Ancient Box recently, I'd recommend doing it because it is going to be a force to be reckoned with at the event. Now, things are changing with Charizard kind of creeping up to kind of counter this Roaring Moon. So we'll have to see how things go in the last week heading towards Baltimore, but this is a great place to check. Now, we're about to enter into our #1 pick of the week. I'm sure a lot of you could have guessed it already, and it might be the hot take. Maybe it's the right one. We'll have to find out. What's our best deck? Let's jump into it. Here we have it. The best deck in the format is going to be Regidrago VSTAR. Now, Regidrago VSTAR really stole the show at the World Championships. I think that this deck, had it not been due to the game loss in the top 8 with Ian Robb, my teammates, I think it would have gone on to win. Ian already was able to get past Jesse Parker in the Azul GG show match, so would have went on to at least make finals if we take that result as if it was at the tournaments. In finals, would have played against a Roaring Moon and maybe would have had a similar matchup to what was going on with Ian in the top 4 with Jesse Parker. Regidrago had its opportunity. It didn't win due to a ruling. Whether it's controversial or not, Regidrago was the most successful deck at Worlds across the board. Most top player groups flocked to this deck. I personally played this to a winning into top 8, lost my winning in place 36 at Worlds. Regidrago is all about copying dragon Pokemon out of your discard pile and really having a lot of opportunities. Teal Mask accelerating those energies and energy switching to the Regidrago. Legacy Star allows you to get anything back, and when you have the power of choice, you have the power of choice of attacks, the power of choice of attacking with multiple different Pokemon. So you can attack with Teal Mask, Mew, Squawkabilly, Radiant Charizard, Drago, whatever. The power of bringing back support, like whatever you need, you have all the control when it comes to playing this deck. And one of the common misconceptions is, oh, it's a stage 1 V-Star deck, or it's a V-Star deck. Might be inconsistent. Legacy Star is one of the most consistent abilities in the game, because even if you have a bad hand, you could pitch 7 cards, maybe get a research, maybe get something and see success there. I like the 3 Night Stretcher build with the minimal energies. I haven't been burned by it, but it's one of those things where if I was playing at Baltimore Regionals, I'd be locking this in. Has a solid matchup against most of the decks, has answers against the turbo aggressive decks with the kind of Kyurem game plan that we've been seeing a lot, where you just go Kyurem twice to win the game, copying with Regidrago. Again, don't try to hit those Teal Masks. I think this is really the deck of our Shrouded Fable format, and if you're a Regidrago player, maybe that's reassuring. Maybe things are going to change going forward. Right now, I think Regidrago's it. I really like Haxorus in this deck. I think Haxorus kind of allows you to hit a lot of numbers that you previously couldn't. We'll have to see how it goes, but right now, Regidrago's at #1. Let me know what you think about the top 10 decks in the comments below. And again, check out our description if you're missing any of the cards for these decks. Totally love for Shuffle to support you and our sponsors to support you, getting all the cards that you need. And that's what we got going on for our video today. Hopefully this has been a pretty informative video, sharing a lot of my top deck lists. These are the deck lists that I have built with me in person in my Ultimate Guard Omni Hive. I've been playing in League Cups, League Challenges. I was at the TSS GameStop event in Dallas. I was at the World Championships. I hope that everyone enjoys watching this video and just learning more about the metagame, whether you're a seasoned competitor and you just want to have another take on it, or you're someone new to the game and being like, hey, what are the decks that are? Hopefully you enjoyed watching the content on the Shuffle Squad. For me, like I said in the video, my wife is giving birth today, and it's weird that you could schedule that nowadays, but that's how it's going to happen sometimes. I guess there's underlying conditions. I'm not a doctor. I'm literally a Pokemon YouTuber at the end of the day. So that's exciting. I'm going to be dealing with that. So I might not necessarily have as many videos over the next week, but I'm planning to get a couple out there if that's possible. We'll see how early parenthood works with content creation and all that stuff. If there's any parents in the chat, let me know what you think. Totally would love any advice on that. Otherwise, later on in September, I will have coaching slots open on my Metafy. So if you are looking to get better at the game, that baby's not going to feed itself. So Metafy definitely is going to be helping me out there. Let me help you. It's a mutual thing, you know what I'm saying? But otherwise, I will catch up with all y'all later. Peace out and have a great one. Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.